Hey, BearsFan092 here with the re-release of the standard capture of use video for Pokemon Black and White. Since I released the previous video, there have been some updates that make the job easier. I'll leave the previous video up for a month before this video fully replaces it. First, let's gather our materials. We need a DS system of any sort, including a DSi or 3DS. We also need at least one shade out with a recorded chatter, although 2 is preferred for speed's sake. Make sure they have the same chatter to the best of your ability. We also need a Pokemon with Sweet Scent so we can capture Pokemon in an area without moving NPCs. You also need your DS's MAC address. In terms of programs, we need Eon Timer by ToastPlusOne, and RNG Reporter by Mingot and OmegaDonut. In the first version of this video, I said that you may not do standard abuse with a flashcard, emulator, action replay, or any non-standard setup. This statement is partially false. Some setups are consistent enough to be used, but your mileage may vary. For example, my action replay is consistent enough for use, but my friend's action replay is not due because it's a different build. Okay, open up RNG Reporter and click DS Parameters Search on the right hand side of the screen. Pick an arbitrary date and time and enter it in the corresponding field. For the seconds value, put 30. Input your DS's MAC address, DS type, and game type in the proper fields. Leave the held buttons as they are. For the next part, have your game saved in a moving NPC free zone. I'll be in the last cave of Victory Road. Have your Sweet Center in your party and ready to go, and I'll see you guys on camera. Okay, so now take the arbitrary time you picked and set the DS clock to the date, hour, and minute of that time. Now open up Eon Timer. Under the standard mode, input 30 for target seconds. So as you see, my stopwatch changed. Okay. Now, what you want to do is you want to hit start on Eon Timer and set your clock at the same time. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so now we need to get back to the main menu very quickly, or however way you reset it. And once the timer hits 0, we need to load our game in whatever manner you usually do it. Now, as the game's loading, take care not to press any buttons during the initial few seconds. Once the Nintendo logo shows up, you may press buttons again. So, okay. So, now load your game, but don't activate the C gear because it's a standard abuse. As soon as you load, pause the game and initiate a Sweet Scent. And I'm going to do that now. Okay, so we're going to Sweet Scent now. And we're going to capture the Pokemon that we immediately encounter. Now, if it's at a high enough level, you can get a possible range of IVs using RNG Reporter. If it's not, you need to come up with some sort of method to come up with getting that information. In my case, I'll use RNG Reporter's built-in IV checker once I catch this Pokemon. So I'll get back to you guys once I get it. Okay, so I checked the stats in my Mienfoo, and I plugged them into the IV checker / mini dex in RNG Reporter, and I've got an IV range. Now what we want to do is go back to the parameter finder and input these IV ranges in the correct fields. So 23, 24 for HP range, 4 to 5 for attack, 22 to 24 for defense, 17 to 19 for special attack, special defense is a 25 for sure, and speed is between 19 and 21. Okay, so now RNG Reporter will search through all the combinations of this once we hit search. So I will do that now. And it found my my results. Now, these parameters are probably correct for your DS. However, if you end up with multiple results due to IV ranges, you need to repeat the process again and see which result is repeated. Now, the actual second says 30, which means that Eon Timer is calibrated for my setup correctly. If you get a seconds value different from what you expected, what you need to do is you need to go over to Eon Timer and input the seconds value did hit into the second hit field here, and then hit update. And Eon Timer will adjust itself accordingly for your setup. Okay, so now that we have our results, click Use Result in Time Finder. And what this will do is it'll put your parameters into the time finder, which will allow you to search for standard seeds. I'm going to head over to the computer and I'll talk to you guys there. One last thing before we move on. You should probably redo the parameter finding process, except this time, change 2 of the held buttons to arbitrary buttons. And redo the process, except when I told you not to hold any buttons, hold those buttons. And then refine your parameters. Oftentimes, a lot of people find that their timer 0 shifts by 1. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to make a note that if you're going after a seed that requires button presses, you're going to have to aim for that timer 0 value rather than the timer 0 value you got when there were no button presses. This will come back to haunt us later. Now we have to look for a target IV spread with our parameters. I'm thinking I'm going to do a Durant since we're in Victory Road anyway. I want a flawless physical spread, so I set my IVs accordingly. Change the encounter type to whatever Pokemon you're going after. For example, a player going after Terrakion should change the type to stationary Pokemon. Now, for simplicity, I'm going to leave the max and min frame at 1, so I don't need to advance the IV RNG. However, you can increase the max IV frame, but this will require you to advance the frame by number X by walking 128 steps with X Pokemon in your party. Now, go to the DS parameters part in the time finder and check the boxes for 1, 2, and 3 button presses. Now, if you found that your timer 0 value increased when you had button presses, change the timer 0 value in the parameter field accordingly and run a search. In addition, if you don't find a result you like there, you can also run another search, this time with only the no button presses checkbox checked, and then change your timer 0 value to whatever it was when you didn't have any button presses when you were finding parameters. After a search, we should have a result. Right-click this result and click Copy Seeds to Clipboard. Set the method in the main RNG reporter window to Gen 5 PID RNG. Paste the seed into the seed field. Set the encounter type like you previously did for the time finder. On the right side of the screen, click Calculate Initial PID Frame. You'll notice this will change the starting frame number. In most cases where there are no NPCs, this number is accurate. Where there are NPCs, I find that if I pause the game immediately, the effective starting frame is 1 to 5 higher than predicted. So take that into account and adjust your approach as you see fit if you miss your target later. Now on the right side of the screen, set your desired nature and ability for the Pokemon. If you don't know the ability number, look at RNG Reporter's Pokedex function. To determine encounter slots, go under 5th Gen Tools and click the encounter slot table for your game. Scroll to your location in-game and see which slots your desired species appears, taking care that the first column is actually encounter slot 0. I found that Durant's encounter slots are 0, 2, 6, 8, and 10 for where I am in Victory Road, so I put those in. Now hit Generate. Click the first PID frame that isn't within 5 of your initial frame. This will be your target if you set everything correctly. To calculate how many times you need to view a CHADOT summary, take your target PID frame and subtract your initial PID frame. For me, my target is 57 while my initial is 49, so I need to view CHADOT summary 8 times, making sure I have a recorded chatter. Now I'm going to show you a way to verify that you hit your standard seed in-game. Clear the nature, ability, and encounter slots we set earlier and hit Generate again. Take a look at the CHADOT pitch section. CHADOT changes the pitch of its recorded chatter slightly every time. So, if NPCs aren't advancing your PID frame, you should hear these pitches in this order. If NPCs are advancing your frame, you'll be somewhere further down the list. If this proves too difficult for you, ignore CHADOT pitches, as standard seeds usually can be hit quickly after a miss. If you can't hit your standard seed, you can use the parameter finder to see what seed you are hitting. With this knowledge in tow, let's begin RNGing Durant. Okay, so I've taken my seed from the time finder and I put its time into the DS. And also I've taken the seconds value from the seed and put it in the Eon Timer. Now, what we need to do is to hit A on the DS clock and start Eon Timer at the same time. When this timer hits 0, we need to load our game and then hold the buttons listed on the key presses here, and then that should get us our seed. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so Eon Timers are running, and for time's sake, I'm going to cut this out of the video, but I'm booting up my DS. Okay, so now the Eon Timer is starting to approach 0, so when it does hit 0, I'm going to start the game and hold L and Y since those are my button presses. So okay, so I've done that. Now that Nintendo logo is showing up, I can let go of the button. I'm going to cut this part out of the video as well. Okay, so now I started up the game and I paused immediately. Now, turning on the sound a bit, I'm going to listen to the 3 Chatot pitches and then see if their pitch matches what RNG reporter predicted, which in my case, there's a low pitch, a high pitch, and then a mid-low pitch. So, and that sounds like the pitch. So, that counts as 3 advances. So, and I need 8 total, so I'm going to listen to 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now that we've done that, time to sweet scent. And a Durand appeared as predicted. And I'm a dirty hacker, so I'm going to use my Master Balls. And I'm not gonna give a nickname to it. Okay, now check our result and see if we got the Pokemon we wanted. It's adamant nature and somewhat vain. That's a pretty good indication that we got the Pokemon we wanted. I'm gonna go plug in its stats into RNG Reporter, and I'll get back to you guys once I verify that we did actually hit our Pokemon. Okay, so after plugging in the stats, I see that all the IVs have a potential to be 31 except for the special attack, which I didn't specify earlier. To me, this says that we did hit our spread and that we are finished. And with that, that is an updated tutorial on how to do standard abuse for Pokemon Black and White. Okay, I got a few minutes left in this video before YouTube cuts me off, so a little FAQ. Now, some people have come to me saying, hey, I can't find my parameters. Usually this comes from one of 3 sources of errors. A, they use Cerebee's IV calculator, which is terrible. You should just use RNG reporters. B, they don't respect the fact that the DS uses military time, so they'll think that like 1 p.m. is 1 o'clock on their DS, when in reality it's 13. And the last source of error is people not pausing immediately after they start their game. That's kind of a key fact in order to stop any stray IV advancements, especially by walking. Now, the second question I get often is about weird setups like flashcards, action replays, things like that. The answer is, I don't know. I know that the action replay DSI can be inconsistent, but I've also been told that it can work. I have an old school action replay DS that loads the cartridge in the game, not the one that you pop out. And I know that one works. My best advice to you is to just try finding your parameters and seeing if they work. When finding parameters for weird setups, I would widen the search range, and sometimes they can fall outside the traditional RNG reporter search ranges. The last question I sometimes get is that does the standard abuse work for Entralink Pokemon, because are they considered wild Pokemon? This does not work with the entry link because the entry link involves turning on the C gear. However, I do have a video upcoming on how to abuse for entry link Pokemon IVs and Nature Wise. However, the procedure is a little rough right now, and I'm waiting for a few programs to be polished up before I actually make a tutorial on it. But if you have any questions, just leave them in a comment and I'll try to get to them. Thanks.